Allison Levin. Having learned about the realities of day-to-day farming operations growing up on her parents' organic farm, Allison founded the Community Harvest of Central Vermont in 2014. Fueled by her passion to ensure that everyone has access to nutritious, locally produced food and none of it is wasted, Community Harvest of Central Vermont has grown into a year-round gleaning and food recovery organization. Allison has extensive experience in systems development, food handling, storage, program logistics, community networking, and more. This presentation of a case study in developing year-round distribution systems will focus on how to balance local farm surplus, logistical challenges, and local charitable needs. When you glean 12,000 pounds of apples in October and food shelf only needs one 40-pound box a week, what do you do? Thank you.
Great, well, if you want to pull it to the next slide, Lisa, when you're ready. Great, thank you so much, Kara. And thank you guys all for being here today. A little nervous, so I'm gonna start by asking you guys a question. How many of you are interested or contemplating adding to your storage or expanding the duration of your distribution season? So a few of you, great. And for those of you who maybe aren't looking at that, there's still lots of little tidbits and things that you might find useful in the way that we run our particular model. One of our big drivers is wanting to keep the food as local as possible. So knowing that we have a big quantity of one crop at a certain time, we could find a home for that, but we might have to send it farther away if we wanted to use it right away. So making sure that our local food shelves have access to that food instead of sending it to other places. So balancing the surplus with also that need and having those both be equal priorities in the work that we're doing. Some other benefits to our year-round model are creating access in the winter months to our recipient organizations when they have very little fresh food available, so really helping them in the off seasons when they don't necessarily have things coming in from people's gardens or other fresh sources. Being open all the time for food donors, so that they know that we're available to take food year-round and there's no sort of, it's this season but not that season, we're always available to utilize any surplus they have available. And being available to engage volunteers year-round, which is key for keeping them engaged and involved. That's a key piece of the puzzle as well for us. And we've been able to do this through diversification and some other different strategies. Next slide. So I'm going to focus on 4 areas today that we, aspects of our model and the systems that we have in place. After each point, I'll stop and have a chance for some questions or comments or conversation before we move on to the next area. So love to hear your thoughts and feedback or something that you want to expand on. So touching on sort of the realities and benefits of this model, looking at the storage and infrastructure that we've been able to create over a number of years, then moving on to some of those challenges and solutions that we deal with in terms of storing food and the realities of that. Looking at how we've been able to broaden our diversify our base of food so that we can have sort of critical mass year-round, and then thinking about how we communicate and to make this system possible, and making sure that food is being utilized and the access is equal access to all of our recipient organizations. So next slide. So before I get started with these different points, I'd love to just give you a quick overview of our organization. I don't want to block you guys over here. So our organization, I founded in 2014, so we're about 12 years old. We donate 120,000 pounds a year. We work with 50 to 60 recipient organizations, food donor partners. We call them food donors, so they're not just farms. We work with 30 recipient organizations, so really high density of amount that we're sending to recipient organizations each one. Volunteers range between 200 and 400 a year that we work with, and I have a staff of 4 part-time people that work with me as well. Our mission has 3 sort of components: equal importance of addressing food insecurity, but also addressing waste, and then really closely followed by education. So making sure that we're incorporating an educational component in all the work that we're doing with all of our partners. And our quote off season, which isn't really off anymore, is December through May, sort of the shoulder seasons when we don't have as much, active fielding that we're doing. It's more the store things that we have on hand. Next slide. So jumping right into the elements, and yeah, the PowerPoint has the bullets are different, so just ignore that. Question marks weren't intentional. So we started out like many of you may have with, my Subaru wagon and one pallet in a farmer's cooler to recover the food. We've always brought from the Glean, brought it back and aggregated it, stored it for a weekly distribution. That's always been our model. But early on, it was, whatever we had, and didn't even have many containers for those cabbages. So next slide. So little by little, we've been able to add to that infrastructure. So in year 2, we worked to build a freestanding, movable little building with volunteers, totally custom built space that we had as a walk-in cooler. I upgraded my Subaru for a pickup truck, but as long as it had backs for my toddlers. So that was, improvement at that point in time and capacity that we were able to use. We were still using my barn, volunteers' basements, you know the drill. All the different ways that you are creative about planning spaces, and it was, 5 minutes there, 10 minutes there to get all of the stuff that you needed for one glean or activity. Next slide. So along the way, got a little cozy here and there. This is inside that little green building. I think this is during COVID, where we had federal food boxes and stored crops and everything else all in one little building. I think there are a couple moments when there wasn't any airspace in that building. Next slide. We've gotten to the next level where we have, in addition to that little green building, our farm partner really generously needed some storage space for themselves and built a facility for us that we're able to rent, which is amazing, right next to our little building. Funny how that is. He saw the need and knew what would make sense. So we now have the 140 square feet of building that we did in 2016, and now the additional 1,200 square feet that we have for our facility, along with our cargo van that we were able to purchase outright during COVID as well. So that expands our capacity substantially. What actually happened is we expanded during COVID, we just didn't have any of the infrastructure. So we've been trying to catch up over the last couple of years to increase to that level. We still have a pickup truck because that's what we use for the gleans as well, and all of the resources. Next slide. Inside our facility, so in addition to that small cooler building, we have 2 additional walk-ins almost the same size. So we have now 3 full walk-ins that we can use, have different temperatures, different spaces. We have all of our supplies in one space, which is amazing. And we have all of our box storage and all of our other supplies. We also have hot and cold running water, heat, and somewhat cooling in the summertime because our landlord insulated the building really nicely. Capacity for using carts instead of having to carry everything, and space where volunteers can work year-round, which is really amazing and really helps them stay engaged throughout the season. Next slide. In addition to that, we built ourselves a little rooftop washer out of a cement mixer, really fun little thing that we can have inside and have space for in the wintertime, and we have some coolers as well, freezers as well. So we're able to have about 5 different temperatures that we can store food at year-round. It used to be we were outside that little green building with an awning in the middle of the winter, which is not so fun, but doable. Next slide. All of the coolers that we've used since the beginning, when we built our first cooler, we've always used the AC and Coolot technology, which we found has been very beneficial for ours and relatively easy to manage and not very expensive. That said, when it gets to be the teens Fahrenheit in the wintertime, that doesn't quite work so well, so we have to come up with other strategies. So we are using our little original building is cold outside of it, so all we have to do for that is just add a heater. The important thing is using a really high, a thermostat that's pretty good quality. The heater doesn't have to be good quality, you just need to turn it on and off, but the thermostat's the key for that. So that works relatively well, and now that we have that third cooler, or 3 coolers, that is really our apple cooler, and that gets stored, filled up with apples, and we're just finishing them now, so about 6 months of apple storage that little building is able to, and if we fill it up, it's about 15,000 pounds of apples could be stored in that building, and we can store them for all of the winter time. Then our other 2 coolers, we had to rethink it when we put coolers inside a warm space. Well, that's not gonna work anymore. We have to come up with another strategy, so we decided, well, it's cold outside, this is maddening, we can't keep our stuff cold, but outside it's freezing out or below freezing. So we were able to add an intake fan to bring in that cold air, circulate it on the thermostat, and use that outside air, which cuts down our costs as well, because that's a lot less efficient, or more efficient to use than an AC, and doesn't have so many challenges. Next slide. Actually, we can go back to that first one. So we're gonna pause here. So questions. You already had a question over there. Lisa, do you have that other mic? Where do we ended up with that?
I don't actually know where that other one.
Oh, we lost it already?
Thanks for that.
Was it on? Oh, it's hiding behind here. Great, you had that question back.
Thank you.
Allison.
It's off.
Oh.
Yeah, where's it? I can't see with my glasses on.
Thank you. You'll need to take this back.
I can do it.
Thank you. My question is, have you considered any subterranean storage? Because I understand that a few feet beneath ground is also very cold. Go ahead, you have a laugh. Give your thoughts. Thank you.
I don't usually talk about this. No. So in the process before we built our cooler, we actually we used a crypt for a little while. The cemetery had, it hadn't been used in like 50 years, but the cemetery had basically a root cellar underneath the ground. And yeah, I don't talk about it too much. Doesn't seem like quite the right thing, but yeah. So yeah, there's definitely root cellar, and that's something that there are a handful in Vermont that people are using for keeping things. But actually, it stayed pretty much decent temperature in there. But yeah, that was a temporary strategy. It was funny, one of our recipient organizations suggested it because he was like on the city council or something, so only a few people know about it. Not a selling point necessarily.
This session is being recorded.
Yeah.
That's okay, that was a long time ago. Other questions?
There's one from Zoom.
Yeah.
They can see it, so it doesn't matter. Does the space heater effectively regulate the temp in the green shed during winter, or do you primarily use the refrigerated spaces inside the building during winter?
We use that all winter long. Actually, we use it more in the winter, that green space, yeah, with a heater to keep the apples just from freezing, basically, right? 36 degrees, 34 degrees. Other questions about these slides? Yeah, right here.
I don't know if you're gonna talk about it on your slides, but how did you go about standardizing the food safety standards that you guys how did you go about standardizing the food safety standards that you guys are using to, you were saying storing apples for 6 months, how are you standardizing what food, how long food can be stored at certain temperatures and things like that?
It's mostly, the next section we'll talk about sorting and storage, so talking about that some. Basically, these are all, I would say we don't necessarily have a lot of set oh, this is gonna last as long. It's, you look at it and you decide, is it a perfect, grocery store apple still, or is it not? So visibly understanding what you're storing, that's the main sort of strategy is, and taking a lot from what we're learning from farmers and looking at what their strategies are. Large percentage of our model is mimicking what the farmers are doing with how they're storing, because this is all stuff that farmers are storing, same kind of things. Any other questions on this section?
I just think that the CoolBot technology has forever been a gleaner's friend, right? It's the way to get infrastructure, you can have it on wheels, figure out how to build it inside for not too expensive. There are some limitations for how much space the CoolBot can actually cool efficiently. So I don't know if you mentioned how big this space is.
Each of them they're all about the same, 140 square feet, and we're using the biggest AC you can get, which is the 24, psi, whatever that is, whatever the watts or whatever it is. So I think that's about the biggest size. I know there's some farms who have tried to use bigger spaces with like 2 ACs. It's not ideal. So this is sort of the biggest individual spaces that you can use.
It's like smaller than from the pole to the wall.
Yeah, our one cooler is 11 by 13, so it's about this space between the chair there. That's a decent size.
Yeah.
We got 3 of those, so it gives you a good amount of flexibility.
Yeah.
But it's bigger than that, you gotta think about other options.
But then how do you decide like where to strategically place coolers? Like I remember doing a bunch of gleaning the first year and then being like, okay, this is where we're gonna put this cooler in the community. We plugged it into the side of a particular building because it's like where we had more food pantries.
Right.
That needed the food and they would come shop the Coolbot. But like, do you have like distributors and all centralized?
It's all centralized. Yeah, everything's centralized for us. Yep, great. I'm gonna move on to the next section and go into the next slide. Talk a little bit now about the challenge and some solutions around storage. So there's a lot of things that goes into storing food, even for a few days, as many of you who do that know. Obviously, when you start storing it long term, that just gets exponentially more complicated. Some of these factors, I could talk about any one of these for an hour if anyone wants to, happy to anytime. Temperature, every crop is gonna have a different ideal temperature, and humidity, moisture, all different factors. Again, every crop is gonna be different. Air circulation, you're storing things long term, you wanna really keep that air moving around as much as you can. Crop imperfections, that's a big one. Storing in a lot of, as we know, a lot of what we get, not huge quantities, but certainly a percentage of what we're getting is imperfect, so that's gonna affect your storage ability a lot. Containers, what kind of containers are you storing it in? Affects all those other things previously. Cleaning the crops, once you store them for a while, they're not quite as fresh and you don't necessarily want to send them out dirty. And cleaning your spaces and such once they've had storage for a long time. Waste disposal is obviously going to be part of that as well, and knowing that you will have waste as part of that process and how you're going to manage that. So all different key factors. Next slide. So those conditions, just touching on these a little bit more, do you wash those root crops? Do you not wash them? It's going to there's many factors, and we take a lot from what our farmers are doing, what we've seen, similar seasons, similar crops, the same exact crop. They give us some of their carrot bags, and they're storing them great. We think that's going to use some of the strategies that they use. Grain bags, root crop bags have different moisture ability to hold moisture in, so that depending on the crop is going to make a difference. The carrots this year may not act the same as next year. Your root crops off heat, so they really want to be at 32 degrees in the ideal world. Can't actually do that with a Coolbot, so you have to do the best you can. Apples want really high humidity, oxygen in an ideal world, working towards that, not necessarily ideal, but perfect. Next slide. Again, just really thinking about learning from those other entities in your community that are doing that, not necessarily nonprofits, maybe it's the for-profit food system that's using, and these are all different strategies. The farmer's stack of bags of root crops is twice as high as our stack, and it looks pretty scary, so you just sort of learn from them and figure out what your tricks are and how to stack. I don't want to stack a 15-foot high stack of root bags, but they do it. Their Jamaicans are there, I haven't seen them do it, but we just sort of do the best we can on those different strategies. So learning from other partners is really key. Next slide. And managing that waste. You're gonna have waste when you're storing food, and strategies for storing that, and it's gonna take some time and resources to build that into your system. We end up handling food a lot more times because we're storing it long term. We're still trying not to move it around that much and handle it more than necessary, but that's a component. And as I was saying earlier in the last conversation when we were chatting, having recipient organizations who have the capacity to utilize imperfect things, having chefs who want to make applesauce, so they're happy to take things that are imperfect, where you set aside the stuff that's perfect for the food shelves. And the apples we got from Gather, one of the cleaning programs in November, I'm still sending them out this week. We have the last 4 boxes, they're going out, they're perfect, they're beautiful, so it depends. And having a relationship with a a pig farmer or compost or whatever strategy you have to make sure you have a plan for how that surplus or that waste is going to be managed. Definitely key. We can go back to that. Questions about that storage elements? Yeah.
Do you have a system of checking, oh, sorry. Thank you. Do you have a system of checking on the crops, maybe monthly, weekly? Do you do that, or is it more just like it's time for them to go out, let's see what kind of shape they're in, let's sort them?
Right. Last winter, we didn't have a lot of storage crops per se. So yeah, we did. 2 years ago, we had a lot of fun with carrots per se. You're always wanting to keep tabs on that regularly. You really don't want that stuff to sit long term. We're sending out apples constantly. I'm constantly thinking about, okay, which ones are keeping the best, which ones need to move right away. So constantly those and interacting with those. Sometimes we're moving them around to adjust their position, pull out ones that are unhappy, not necessarily sorting through all of them, but certainly assessing which ones or these ones we need to wash first and go through those and deal with those. Not necessarily like we have to look through all of them on a certain rotation, but really being in tune with what's happening with them all the time. Yes. Other questions?
And I have another really quick.
Yeah.
This year I experimented for the first time with leaving some boxes of root vegetables, maybe some apples for 2 to 4 weeks in cold storage, which I hadn't done before. And my biggest surprise was that we used mostly secondhand banana boxes. And I went to get them and I was like, oh, these boxes have collapsed from like the humidity and just the combination of the cold storage. And just curious if you have any thoughts about cardboard in cold storage, if you try to avoid it and then box it later using the bags, what have you found?
Yeah, we don't go near cardboard. We don't use any plain cardboard. It's either wax boxes. Apples are all in wax boxes. That's a whole nother subject. Because they're doing away with wax boxes. And then other things, depending on, most of the stuff has so much humidity in it, and they're putting off so much humidity that anything that is going to soak up that humidity is really challenging. That said, that keeps them crispy and keeps the carrots from drying out if you have them in some kind of bag. So that it's a benefit, but you have to really manage it. So yeah, plain cardboard is not your friend when you're storing this kind of stuff. Other questions? Okay, and then we can move on to the next section. So we found that one of the key things to having it's great to store these apples, but if you just have apples, that's not enough to make it worth delivering to sites on a regular basis. So how can we, beyond the root crops and other things, how can we diversify the quote staples that we have in the off season? We're not talking about cans here, we're talking about just food that we can distribute to have enough for a foundation for that year-round distribution. So we started adding other things and thinking about what that might look like to create that critical mass. Next slide. What might you think about in assessing that for your organization, or what it's going to be different for everyone, and it's going to maybe based on what your mission of your organization is. It's not just what might be available. You may decide that certain things are not what you want to deal with, because that's as a complicating factor. So thinking about that, thinking about what businesses locally to you are producing, whether it's crops or other value-added things, or other sources of food that you might be able to incorporate in the off-season, and many of you I know are doing that in different ways. So just different strategies for thinking about that beyond your typical, field harvesting that you might already be working in. Next slide. So we've been able to broaden our base. We really started with bread because we knew that was really consistently available year-round. Finding things that are consistent is always helpful, but having things that jump in, one-off things is always great too. It's nice to have that little, bits of diversity there. So bread, making connections and partnerships with other meat producers and butchers who have a surplus of something that's just not as, is moving as quickly. So we get a lot of ribs and beef bones, so great protein elements for our chefs. In particular, ribs, everyone loves them. It doesn't matter how many we have. Adding in dairy products, eggs obviously, and other value-added products. Recently we've had partnerships with value-added producers who are working with the farms but are creating other things like hot sauce, hot honey, other things like that. And just really nice to have a little bit of diversity. We can send to our partners. We're, again, continuing to focus on the local producers, but that's what our goals are for our organization, but there's obviously a lot of variability that you could choose from. Next slide. Just thinking about different ways that you can create that critical mass so that you have 4 or 5 different items that you can distribute. Once you create that space and that structure, that food will start finding you. And the producers will know that you have the capacity to take, whether it's a one-off thing or a consistent thing, they'll start talking to each other and saying, oh, well, this is where we can do this, we can get a write-up for this, and that's a benefit for it. Next slide. Just some other products that we've had recently, fancy artisan cheese and hot honey, which was really popular. About 20% or about 19,000 pounds of what we sent out last year is non-produce. And a lot of that's not just in the off-season, it's year-round, the bread and other things that we're distributing, really diversify that food base, and you know, no food shelf is gonna say no to having that diversity. Next slide. In addition to those additional elements, really having 2 to 6 or whatever number of those storage crops is still really key to being able to have a good mix of things to send to sites. You know, certainly for our purposes, that's really important. And this year was a little bit challenging for us because we had another challenging growing season and didn't have a lot of the root crops that we normally did. So we were creative and found other sources for things to store, and we're actually able to store up about 12,000 pounds, which is pretty average for us by the end of December. So that, you know, little cooler building and other buildings had a lot of capacity. And your storage crops are gonna vary each season. One year you might have cabbage, you might have carrots for 2 years and then have none. So even if you have a system where you have it for one crop, you may have to switch it up and be creative and come up with a different strategy the next year. I think we'll go back one. Questions about that section, diversification, and ways that you might think about it? Yeah. Where's our, here's that.
I'm kind of curious, since we're talking about like diversifying stuff with chicken and the egg, like because you've invested so much with storage and distribution, did that kind of start with you guys having more quantity at any time than your home relief system could take on in donations, or was that more driven by you guys wanting to have produce available to donate year-round in a more stable way?
Yes. Well, it happened because of COVID. We doubled the amount of food we were sending out, and we're doing it all in one space. So we sort of were trying to catch up by creating the physical space. And now that we have the space, and we want to be distributing to sites year-round, now we're actively going out and looking for other food sources. So building those relationships with the other value-added producers and trying to connect more of the cheese producers so that we then have more critical mass. It's awesome, because we now have the space and capacity to take basically whatever they want, whatever we can come up with locally. Anyone else, any other questions about this section?
Do you purchase any food?
We do not, no. No. We've stayed away from handling money so far. Just for our strategy. Yeah, any other questions on? Yeah. Perfect. Any thoughts about if you were to source something else, what that might be in your particular situations, or something you've contemplated?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Did someone say something?
Can you repeat the question?
Oh, can I repeat the question?
Yeah.
Oh, yes. I just, if there was one thing that you might add to what you're doing and expand what that might be for your operation.
Solar panels.
Solar.
Yeah,
Right.
because with the hurricanes, we have problems during the summertime, and we need to refrigerate the food. So when it's hurricane season, sometimes the electricity company cuts the lights.
Yeah.
And
Not
we need to distribute in that day.
Right. It was time to.
So solar panels for us will be.
Right. Yeah. Great. So the last section, just wanting to talk a little bit about how we assess and communicate with our partners, because when you have weeks and weeks worth of a crop stored up, you need to have some strategy for knowing when to send it to a partner. Because they may or may not want apples every single week, every week for 6 months. They may, have, enough for now, let's take a break, or we're moving for them more quickly, we need more this week. So really having different communication systems and strategies for that, and the benefits of that, help to make sure that it's all getting utilized, and decreasing the amount of waste, obviously, that might be created if you're sending them something that they can't use. And because we're aggregating all the food, creating more equal access to that food for all of our partners. The next slide. So again, we're looking and modeling what we're doing similarly to what farms and food producers may be doing if they're sending out an order, an email for their wholesale clients, for example. These are the things that we have available on any given week. We also offer, these are the things we think we might have available. We think we might get this thing. We try not to commit to anything until we actually have it in hand. We might get these other things, and we tend to be getting other things over time. This is just an example of our offer email from a week or so ago, just the random things that we had in storage or we knew we'd be getting in. We communicate through an email, weekly conversation with those, all of our recipient sites. And that creates ongoing feedback, and we encourage them to not just request what we might have on the list, but give us a wish list of things they might want, because we never know what additional things we may pick up in the interim when we send out the offer email, and what we might get in additional pickups that we're constantly doing. So if we get those, snips that weren't on the list and someone has asked for them, we know exactly who's going to be excited about getting those. And so that's a key piece to incorporate. We want them as much information as possible. Because of that, we choose not to give them an actual order form. We just send them a list and we ask for a conversation back from them. That gives them an opportunity to give us more details about exactly what they want. And we learn a lot about what's happening for the organization on a weekly basis through that conversation. We also only have 30 recipient sites, so we can really build a relationship with those, get to know them really well, and serve them at a pretty high level. I think our average is about 50, we're providing about 50% of the produce that they're using at every site, on average. So creating that conversation, that's one of the main tools. You do the next slide. So once we sent out that offer, we gather the information. This is just our quick in-house order sheet where we're capturing what the responses we got back from those recipients. We're also using the information that we got when we did the assessments with them, where we sit down and have conversations with them and visit their site and learn what's happening with them, and the surveys that we're sending out on a yearly basis, learning what their preferences are, that site likes chard and this one likes kale. Okay, fine, if we only have one bag of each, you're going to get that kind, you'll get this kind, so that we can really customize that as much as possible. We're also using a CSA model in that if we have a perishable product that has to all go out, we are just dividing it between the sites, and they know that if they ask for, mixed veg or special things, they're going to get whatever we've also gleaned, and they'll get a mix of that. Or they want salad greens, we're going to give them their share. They might get a little bit more than they want if we have to move it all and have to get it out, but they understand that that's part of that. They're a really big site, they'll get their portion, or they're a small site. So we're using all that information to make assessments. So this is sort of they're guiding us, but it's not a definitive, this is exactly what you're going to get. And it's first come, first served. There's some variations for other factors that we know is important. So next slide. So aggregation is creating opportunity for equal access for all of our sites. Everyone, it's amazing when we do our reports at the end of the year, how evenly we've been able to distribute one farm's food between all of our partners. Because we bring it all back into one place, we can give all of our sites equal access to that and bring it to sites. We're also utilizing our volunteers to do the deliveries, and each delivery is done once a week to that site. And so everything that they're getting, so if they're getting one little case of honey, that's fine. It's going in with everything else we're delivering, so it's a pretty efficient strategy for getting that to the shipping sites, and we can deliver it within a half an hour to each of our partners on one morning a week. So within 2 hours, our volunteers have done all of our deliveries. for that week. Also consistency, and this one I didn't even realize until I was doing this presentation is a really amazing benefit of this system, is that our recipient sites and their clients all know exactly what day and when the food is coming. They know when all the fresh produce is going to be at the food shelf, and invariably, that is the most busy day at every partner site and turns into a bit of an event in some locations where they are drawing in people they wouldn't normally have gotten into their site. They're coming in for the produce, and then they're engaging them with their other services that they have available. Because everyone knows exactly on Tuesday morning, that's when the food is going to be there. And creating that community engagement piece that those sites can really rely on, and would not be possible with a different model, which I hadn't really, I mean, I keep hearing about it from sites as we meet with them and they tell us about what's happening, and you hear about what the flow is, but there are also some sites, there's one site that's building all of their cooking classes and all of their programs are all based around our distribution day for that piece of the puzzle. Next slide. So just sort of wrapping up and happy to answer more questions as we finish, but creating these systems, these spaces and structures is just what's needed to then have the food start finding you, and creating those systems will help that create that resource for the community that then will start filling itself. We always wonder, like, oh, we're almost done with this pile of potatoes and this that's stored up, like what else are we gonna have? Invariably, something else shows up, like a few days later, like, oh, I guess the food's just gonna keep coming. So, questions, queries, wonderings?
Time for like one or two questions.
Yeah, great. I don't know what that is. She's got one here.
Thank you. It's very inspiring. I would like to know, in the side of the farmers and with the data that you have been collecting through the years, have you or have any of the farmers done a crop production plan specifically for the boxes, the amount of boxes that your customers selling or something, or not?
Not sure I quite follow.
Like, have one of the farmers planned, like crop plant production?
For us to glean?
Yeah.
Not necessarily, but I'm sure that has happened. Like, it's not part of their, like, oh, we're gonna plant extra for you to harvest. But I know, like, they know that when they plant all those rutabagas, because it's just so easy and the seed's cheap, that they know that we're going to use them. So in sort of informally, I think sometimes that does happen because they do know, and we have farmers who are trying to meet the threshold of donating enough so they don't have to pay taxes. And we have a few that are in that zone where they don't have a big tax bill and they have just enough, so they're purposely looking to find opportunities to donate to us. So they're not necessarily planting it, but they're certainly looking for it.
Okay.
And just to clarify, I think the question is also related to whether they share their crop planning, like their production planning with you so that you can anticipate the kinds of products that you might have. Is that something that?
No, but we have we're certainly sharing our data with them so that they can use it for their crop planning, but not so much in the other way, but we do try to meet with them and sort of we do try to check in with them and say, hey, what are your plans? And sometimes they're sharing with us for seeing what they're gonna have available, certainly. Like, hey, we're doing a lot of lettuce this year, so we're gonna have more of that available. And we're like, great, everyone's doing lettuce. We don't really need more lettuce, but thanks, that's great information. So yeah, sometimes they give us information, and I know that they're using the reports that we're providing them to see, okay, so this is how many beans got gleaned, this thing, okay, that I couldn't avoid that, but next year I'll try to plan better with my rotating, so they're using some of that data as well.
We're on time.
Yeah, great. Thank you.